They did not poison our sun to kill us. They poisoned it to save themselves a difficult conversation about resource compliance. The Meridian Compact's solar remediation notice arrived 11 hours before the dimming began, translated by a system that rendered the phrase tenant star with the same flat indifference a landlord uses for a leaking faucet. Stellar output correction has been authorized under Resource Compliance Statute 12. The tenant star designated Sol will undergo scheduled luminosity reduction of 19%, effective upon probe deployment. This action reflects standard remediation practice, not punitive intent. Beneath it, in smaller script, the line the analysts almost dismissed as boilerplate. The compact regrets any inconvenience experienced by dependent biological populations during the adjustment period. Overseer Caldren Voss delivered the explanation in person, broadcasting from a station in high orbit, speaking flawless English with the calm of an administrator who had corrected 11 other stars and expected the same grateful compliance each time. He explained, without a trace of malice, that Earth's continued refusal to grant the compact extraction rights to the outer system had left them no choice but escalation, that a 19% reduction was well within survivable parameters, according to their own biological models, and that humanity would find the adjustment considerably more tolerable once it stopped mourning a light level it had never actually needed in the first place. He smiled through all of it, the way a man smiles when he believes inconvenience and catastrophe are simply a matter of framing. There was a long silence in the Solar Monitoring Directorate after the probe deployed and the first dimming reading came through. It lasted the better part of a minute, which is a long time to watch a number on a screen mean the death of agriculture on 3 continents. Dr. Imani Solari broke it. She had spent the 6 minutes of Caldren Voss's broadcast not watching his face, but watching the probe's telemetry scroll past on a side monitor. A catalytic signature she had spent 11 years insisting was not a natural coronal phenomenon. "I want that probe's deployment log," she said, "before anyone else touches this data." Nobody in the room understood why. Most of them had spent the last decade filing her research under a heading she had started calling, without much humor left in her, interesting, unfunded. What she had spent those 11 years arguing, to a shrinking list of review boards, was that certain unexplained coronal dimming events recorded a century earlier at other stars carried a chemical signature too precise to be stellar weather. The signature was a catalytic compound, seeded directly into the convective zone, engineered to suppress luminosity by a controlled percentage and hold it there indefinitely, the stellar equivalent of a dimmer switch installed without the owner's consent. Every review board had called the idea speculative. None of them had needed her to be right about it until an alien administration used the exact mechanism on the star humanity actually lived under. "They didn't attack our sun," she said to the room. "They installed a valve in it. I'm the only person here who spent 11 years learning how valves like this actually work." Dr. Theo Bakshi had spent those same 11 years arguing that the catalytic compound in question, if it existed, would have to be self-replicating and remotely addressable to remain stable across a stellar lifetime, an argument that had gotten him quietly dropped from 2 material science conferences before Solari recruited him directly. He did not need convincing now. He sat down at a console before she finished the sentence, because his hands had already started moving. "If the compound is remotely addressable," he said, "then somewhere in that probe's telemetry is an authentication handshake, the same one the compound listens for when the compact adjusts luminosity on purpose. Find that and we are not looking at sabotage. We are looking at the only working switch for our own star." He did not look up from the console. "I can isolate the compound's response profile from the probe's residual emissions. I cannot promise what a countersignal does once it reaches the corona. Then we have until they notice we're listening to find out," Solari said. They worked through the 11 days that followed the way people work when a 19% dimmer is quietly deepening crop failure by the week. Bakshi isolated the compounds addressing protocol from the probe's own maintenance chatter, a low-frequency signal the compact had never bothered encrypting, because no prior species had survived long enough to notice it existed. Solari cross-referenced every fragment against a century of dimming events at other stars, because 11 years of being told this pattern meant nothing had made her determined not to be the reason it failed to mean everything now. At day 9, Bakshi finally leaned back from the console. He did not say anything for almost a full minute, because the number in front of him needed that long to stop sounding insane even to him. "It's not just a dimmer," he said. "It's bidirectional. The same protocol that reduces output can restore it, and past the restoration point, it can push the corona's ejection rate higher than baseline for a controlled window on command." He looked at the isolated waveform one more time. "We are not looking at a way to turn our own sun back on. We are looking at a way to make it briefly, precisely, dangerously brighter, aimed exactly where we choose." The compact noticed on day 11, when Solari's team requested a diagnostic handshake with the probe using an authentication string, no compact administrator had transmitted since deployment. Caldron Voss's response arrived within the hour, polished and precise. Unauthorized interference with compact remediation hardware constituted a serious protocol violation, and Earth had 18 hours to surrender the source of the intrusion or face full luminosity suppression, a euphemism Solari did not need translated twice. She read the ultimatum once, standing in the same directorate room where the first dimming reading had come through. 18 hours, she said. "Bakshi, how much of the ejection protocol can we control reliably right now?" "Enough to aim one burst, maybe two if the corona cooperates. Then we don't need more than that." The compact's enforcement cruiser entered high solar orbit 4 hours ahead of the deadline, close enough to the corona that its own hull shielding required stellar-grade catalytic compensators, the same family of technology Bakshi had spent 11 days learning to read. Its captain did not expect Earth's tiny, dimmed, uncooperative star to do anything except continue quietly dying on schedule. Bakshi transmitted the countersignal at hour 17, 40 minutes before the deadline, timed to a coronal region already aligned with the cruiser's holding position. 12 seconds later, a localized ejection 3 orders of magnitude smaller than a natural flare, precisely shaped and precisely aimed, struck the cruiser's stellar compensator array directly. The compensators, designed to shrug off ordinary flare activity, had never been built to filter a burst carrying their own manufacturer's authentication signature. They accepted it as calibration traffic. They failed accepting it. The cruiser's shields dropped for 6 seconds. No weapon fired from Earth. No weapon needed to. The ship's own instruments recorded a localized thermal spike that would have been survivable at full shielding and was, for those 6 seconds, considerably less survivable without it. The cruiser's captain did not wait to find out how much less. He broke orbit at second 7, transmitting a formal notice that solar conditions at Sol had proven inconsistent with safe enforcement parameters, and withdrew to a distance the corona could no longer politely reach. "Let him go," Solari said, watching the withdrawal from the directorate floor. "We didn't need to hurt anyone to prove the point. We needed them to understand the valve they installed only works because we let it." Caldron Voss's official communication arrived 6 hours later, formally correct in every clause, acknowledging an unanticipated stellar interaction, and proposing a full review of the remediation order pending further study. The second transmission arrived 4 minutes after the first, on a channel his own protocols should not have permitted for personal contact. There was a long pause before he spoke. "I misjudged one specific thing," he said. "Not your survival margins. We model those for every remediation in the abstract. I misjudged how quickly a species would learn to read the valve we installed once we'd shown them it existed. A shorter pause. It was audacious, turning a punishment into a language. I did not expect that. I doubt the Compact's remediation office expected it either, whatever they call it in the coming review. He did not apologize, not in those exact words. It was close enough that the directorate, replaying the transcript that night, agreed it counted. Solari was back at her console 9 hours after the cruiser withdrew, not resting, cross-referencing Bakshi's addressing protocol against a century of other dimmed stars with the same flat attention she had given the first suspicious dataset 11 years earlier. "I've been thinking about the other 10 stars since about hour 3, she said, not looking up. If the Compact opens a formal review of the remediation statute, I wanted to include the deployment logs for every other star they've ever dimmed. We learned to read one valve ourselves, in 11 days, with no cooperation at all. With actual access to the rest of their records, I want to know how many other species are still sitting quietly in the dark, waiting for someone to tell them theirs has a switch too." Bakshi asked if she was already drafting that request. She was.